careless but not deliberate. That's apparently how the HMRC described Nadhim Zahawi's tax dealings. It's not entirely clear which bit of the affair was careless but not deliberate. Was allocating a 40% stake of his startup to a company in tax haven Gibraltar, but repeatedly telling Kay Burley that he did not benefit from any offshore arrangements careless but not deliberate? Or was he having his lawyers threaten Dan Needle, the tax expert investigating Nadhim's dealings with libel, careless but not deliberate? I mean, we've discussed poachers playing gamekeepers on here before, but with apologies to Oscar Wilde, to accidentally forget to pay £3.7 million in taxes could barely be regarded as a misfortune, but to do so whilst Chancellor of the Exchequer could feasibly be regarded as deliberate. If he does get the sack, perhaps Mr. Zahawi should go into PR. Careless, but not deliberate. What a line that is. Our regime should have used it more often. Much better than this effort by Rishi Sunak to drum up a bit more trust in the regime.
This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours.
Compliant face. Thanks, Rishi. Were he not too busy buffooning around the streets of Kyiv, our ex-Prime Minister should have whipped out careless but not deliberate the other day. What with his 800 grand loan being guaranteed by the man Johnson then went on to recommend carelessly to be chairman of the BBC. Then there is the economy. They've locked a generation out of the housing market, condemning them to a life of no kids and renting a shared cupboard between six. But that's all right. The millennials will manage with Netflix and avocados, I suppose. An unfortunate situation, but doubtless a careless one, not a deliberate one. Inflation skyrocketing, and we're on course to be poorer than Poland by 2030. Get in. Not least in part due to the plucking of £400 billion from the magic money tree before shutting down the country and forcing us to walk around Tesco in one direction. Measures never before suggested in medical history to stop the deadly plague that gave us the highest death rate since 2008. Careless, not deliberate. On the COVID note, what about the futile state-ordered separation at death that saw our loved ones uttering their final words alone in the grim backrooms of barely functioning health service, their fingers' final touch, an iPad as they said their last goodbye to their parents, partners, lovers, children and grandchildren? Careless, but not deliberate. Muzzling our children, too, to score socialist brownie points against St. Nicola of the Sturgeon, despite a comprehensive lack of evidence that face nappies have made any difference whatsoever outside of a dentist's salon or the operating theatre. Whisper it now. Careless, but not deliberate. What about the vaccine rollout? So magnificent it made our nation's heart swell with pride. And even if some young hearts were broken, at least we could rely on the manufacturers, the regime and their commissars in the media when they told us it prevented human-to-human transmission. They did test for that, didn't they?
Regarding the question around did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
No, we had to move with the speed of science, leaving Afghanistan in the middle of the night so the Taliban could parade around Kabul with their brand new shiny M16s, Black Hawks and Humvees in the most embarrassing foreign policy escapade in memory, or perhaps ever. Careless, but not deliberate. Flinging the borders open, giving us infinity migrants and housing Albanians in four-star hotels while our own sleep homeless on the street. Careless, not deliberate. What about being so scared of the deranged blue-haired crew that it took them years to pluck up the courage to stop the Tavistock performing irreversible sex changes on kids? Careless, not deliberate. And then on to my favourite topic, the Chinification of the whole education system, where childhood innocence is done away with in adherence to a singular ideology is demanded. Our universities, once the envy of the world, are now reliant on Chinese wonga. and turn out only intellectually incontinent, emotionally insufferable, septum-pierced, whining woke warriors. All, of course, in a drive to drag the greatest minds of the next generation down to the level of the most average. All in the name of equity. Was it careless to let Xi Jinping and his coterie of communist condiments through the door? Or was all this part of a deliberate global shift to the Chinese model? A disenfranchised, demoralized population is, after all, much easier to control and make adhere to the restrictive future that ideas like net zero demand of us all. All while China cobbles together another coal power station or 20 and has Xi a good old giggle. But that's because even the most careless among us come up with something half decent once in a while. But I can't think of a single respectable thing that this menagerie of morons who wish to rule over us have uttered since the days of Thatcher and Reagan.